All right, we're back. We are COMP397. That's web game programming in the winter 2020 semester at Centennial. And this video is for the non-gaming students. Part one is our course intro. And why I say non-gaming students is there's two groups of students that are taking this course this semester. One of them that's interactive gaming students that we're going to have on Tuesday nights and between 6:30 and 9:30 and in this classroom. And there's another set of students, which is you guys, which is going to be from 8:30 in the morning. So 9:30 till 12:30 is one section, and then there's another section from 1:30 to 4:30, which is this section. I'm going to record our classes every week, and I'll be recording this section because it's the second section. I'll be able to, already have gone through the material, and it'll be a little bit smoother when I record the material for this one. So who am I, what are we doing, and what's happening? I'm Tom. I'll be your instructor for this semester. This course is web game programming, and we'll be using a bunch of technologies this semester to do that. So this is an elective for you, for software engineering. I want to open up by saying a couple things. One, if you've come because you think this is an easy or elective that you're not going to do much work in, like maybe some of your other courses, this is not an easy elective. This is a tough elective. And I will explain what it is. It's a technical elective, but we're going to be using some JavaScript, Typescript, and Create.js libraries to create a web game. And that may sound like, okay, no problem. But actually there's a lot of work, and I want to talk about what this is. So starting off, I want to talk about the library we're going to be using. We're going to be using the Create.js library. It's a JavaScript library that's very well supported. It's been out for a long, long time now. And Create.js, what it does is it allows us to play with the HTML5 canvas. And what we do is we can inject our code, our experiences through the HTML5 canvas to create an interactive game. That's what we're going to be doing. Okay. Create.js is a group of libraries that includes Easel.js, Tween.js, Sound.js, and Preload.js. And we'll be using each of these libraries this semester. So that's 4 libraries that make up the suite of libraries for Create.js. We'll be primarily using JavaScript, the latest version of JavaScript, ECMAScript 6, but we're going to use TypeScript to help us to code everything. So TypeScript has been created by Microsoft and is a superset of JavaScript. And what it does is it makes JavaScript a little easier, and it also allows us to use a more strict type of JavaScript that lets us have good tooling. So we're going to see that when there's more error detection and error correction, that's what it does. Code hinting, it allows us to do that as well as it allows us to create what looks to us like object-oriented code in JavaScript. Typically, JavaScript is not object-oriented. It is prototypical or prototypal inheritance. It uses that kind of thing. It's not true classical inheritance that we use with JavaScript. So TypeScript makes it a lot easier for us. So you're learning JavaScript, TypeScript, and of course we're going to do everything this semester with Visual Studio Code. We're not going to be using regular Visual Studio 2017 or 2019. And the reason for this is when we make web applications for the web, most modern web applications nowadays are made with Visual Studio Code, also a Microsoft product. So TypeScript, Microsoft product, Visual Studio Code, a Microsoft product. And it's a great little editor. It gives direct access to the file system, which is a lot different than Visual Studio. Now, nothing's wrong with Visual Studio. It's just a little bit bigger, and it's great for applications that run C#, or if you're running other applications, even C++, Visual Studio is the way to go for those applications. Now, if you're making a web application with Microsoft technologies, so .NET Core, as an example, or you're running on the Microsoft solution stack, IIS, .NET Core, and SQL Server, then Visual Studio 2017 and 2019 are fine development environments. We're not doing that in this course. We're using Visual Studio Code. So while I'm talking, what I'd like you guys to do is please download and install Visual Studio Code first. I'm going to get back to this in a sec, but this is your first install. And as we're talking today, one thing you're going to notice, there's going to be a bunch of installs. Some people have elected to use the machine in front of them, the lab machine, but I highly recommend that you bring your own laptop to this course because it's going to be required from a control perspective. This way you'll be able to control your environment, your laptop. However, if you didn't bring it today or if you don't have access to a laptop, you can still do pretty good with the machine in front of you in the lab, but it's recommended that you have your own laptop. Okay, so Visual Studio Code we're going to use as the editor of choice. We're also going to be using Git here, which is on git-scm.com. I've given you the link. All these links, by the way, are up on eCentennial, so you can go to these websites and download the tools that you need. We're going to do a download of this shortly. I'm also going to be asking you to go up on GitHub, and if you haven't signed up for GitHub before, we're going to be using Git and GitHub as our version control systems this semester. That's what we're going to be doing. So Git and GitHub. And there's 3 reasons why we're going to be using Git and why I use GitHub at all. And the first one is backup. I want to be able to back up all of my code up on using Git locally and GitHub up online. So Git and GitHub. The other reason why is I want to use it for collaboration purposes. So when we work with other people, I'm working a lot. We're going to have a major project in this course, and your project is going to be working with other people, and you can share your code through GitHub. So that's the second reason. We also are going to make our websites, our web games that we're going to make in this course live, and we're going to use GitHub Pages for that. So GitHub Pages, and you can see what that is. GitHub Pages is kind of free hosting on GitHub, right? So what it allows us to do is host our little pages up on GitHub, and there's a little tutorial that we're going to follow later on this semester on how to make that happen. Okay, so Git and GitHub. We're also going to be using Node.js on the back end. So in this course, it's not a Node course, but we're going to be using Node.js for the package manager, so we can manage our different libraries that we download from the internet. So we're going to be using Node.js for that. So that's another download that we're going to do today. So these are all the setup steps for today. Okay. From the book perspective, from a textbook, we're going to be using an older book called Beginning HTML5 Games with Create.js. This is a reference book only. You don't have to buy it. You can get it free from Safari Books Online, from your Toronto Public Library. It's also available through the Centennial Library. I don't recommend you buy it. It's a little bit older. This book is from 2014. However, the great thing about this is it's probably one of the best books that talks about Create.js for games, right? Which is really cool. All right, so take a look. I think it gives you a very high level on how to do things on the canvas and everything else. But again, you don't have to buy this book. Really cool thing is it's only like $9 Canadian if you're going to buy it through Amazon. So I think it's a pretty good price to own a physical copy. Couple other things that I want to talk about. So again, going back to what I said earlier, this is an elective. But I have to tell you that I've run this course a bunch of times, me and this other Professor Wallace. And every time we run this course, right, on a level of difficulty from 1 to 10 as an elective, this is not anything less than a 7 to 8 in terms of difficulty. From a workload perspective, this is a lot more workload than a regular course because you're going to do 2 individual assignments, some in-class exercises, as well as a group project. You're going to have a midterm test and a final presentation. There are no final exams in this course, right? So there's a lot of content that you're going to get. And for some people who are taking this as an elective, that might be too much. I'm just letting you know in advance, so I don't want you guys to be upset with me later because there's going to be some stuff. On the plus side, there's going to be a lot of learning in this course because we're learning different technologies and how to apply different web technologies to make a web application, which is really what we're doing when we're making a game. Game making is really, really hard. I got to start with that, right? It's kind of a mix between art and science. And I think I've talked about this in different courses. So you have art and science coming together to make a game. And of course, even if it's functional, it doesn't mean anything unless it's fun. And that's really challenging to do, to make a game really fun to play, right? So here you're learning a bunch of different things, and you have to make your game fun to be successful. So I think this is where people get a little bit, they're not sure what to expect when they come into the course. And I'm telling you in advance that this is a tough course. Why is it tough? Because the JavaScript that you've learned in the past, and please forgive me when I say this, is probably a little baby JavaScript that you've learned, right? And I mean that you're using JavaScript to manipulate the DOM, which is fair. It's good. But some of the stuff that we learn in school and some of the courses that we have here and in other places, they really scratch the surface of what JavaScript can do. And what we're going to be doing is mostly coding in JavaScript. TypeScript is going to make us code JavaScript a little easier. But the tooling we're going to have to learn how to do, plus using Visual Studio Code and everything else to make things work, can be quite a challenge. This is a hands-on course. I will not be sharing a lot of PowerPoints with you. I'm going to be coding live. That's what I do, right? I'm also going to be recording my course just like I'm doing right now, because I'm not going to tell you that I've ever been accused by a student that I'm slow at coding. I go fast, right? And the problem is you're doing something like this. You're doing this, looking at me and trying to type it in. Meanwhile, I'm just going, right? So it's a hard thing to do. Now I'm going to try and slow myself down. I try every time, but there's installation steps. Your machine may not respond as fast as mine or whatever, so you might get lost. So that might be a challenge. And so I record my courses for a couple of reasons. One, so you can catch up. You can always go back and look at what I'm doing. As well, for reference, because you have your midterm test and you want to be able to, kind of study. And that's some good reference material there, because you can go through and see what I've done. Here's my expectation. My expectation is you know how to code to some degree in some language at this point, right? Most of you are coming here with at least semester 4 or semester 5, in your careers. Let's say at Centennial College, right? Which means you've probably coded in C# and Java. You probably had COMP397 to teach you how to do basic JavaScript, maybe, right? So you've been working with your technology for a long time. It's not something that's new to you. You're not a new person from the street that doesn't know about computers and doesn't know how to code. That's my expectation, right? My expectation is that you're going to arrive on time. No offense. But only because when we do stuff in course, we only have 3 hours for me to give you everything that you need, right? That you're going to be required to do in this course. And there's a lot of material. One thing that also makes this course difficult is the fact that there's a big group component to it. The project is not an individual project. It is a group project, which means you have to work with other people. And that always makes it more challenging, because as programmers, a lot of times we don't want to work with anybody. Wouldn't it be nice if we just can work in isolation on the moon somewhere and program and then get paid, right? It'd be nice, but it's not realistic. And so we have to work together as a team, and we're going to be talking about team stuff. We're going to be using agile methodologies to make our project this semester. So where traditional waterfall project management doesn't work, like we've known in the past, for software engineering, we're going to be using agile and Scrum specifically to create our project. Our project is going to have several releases, 4 main releases, which is going to be our first playable release, our alpha release, our beta release, and our final release. And all this is going to happen in semester, right? So again, workload, high, difficulty, intermediate to advanced, right, for this course. Group work, yes, check, right? Should you attend? Absolutely, to get the best marks you can. Are you going to do presentations, which students hate generally? Yes, you'll do at least 2 in this course, right? And so it makes it for a very challenging course. But the great thing about this, I got to talk about the good things as well, is you're going to come out with a whole pile of new knowledge, new things that you know. It's going to make you a better developer. I know that students have kind of given me feedback that it's going to make it easier for you to understand other frameworks like the mean stack. If you're going to program in a different solution stack, it's going to make it easier. And does anyone know what are the common solution stacks? I already talked about one of them. Microsoft uses IIS, .NET Core, and as well as SQL Server, right? What's another popular solution stack that we use to build applications? Do you know? It's like usually 2 or 3 different technologies: a front-end technology, a middleware, and a back-end. Anyone know? How about the AMP stack? Apache, MySQL, PHP. That's a very common solution stack. And it comes in different flavors. LAMP, Linux, MAMP, Mac, WAMP, Windows, XAMPP, anything, right? And that's a very common solution stack. It's being run. 80% of web applications out there use the AMP stack in some form or another. That's how popular it is. If you're running WordPress, you're running, chances are, an AMP stack, right, to make WordPress run properly. We're not doing that. We're running with Node.js everywhere nowadays, and we're doing something called the mean stack, typically. Mean stack is each of these letters stand for different things: Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node. We're not going to use Angular, Express, and Mongo in this course. The only part of the mean stack we're going to be using is Node. And we're going to be using Node for its Node Package Manager, the ability for us to get libraries from the internet and install them directly into our application, right? That's what we're going to be using it for. So, again, intermediate to advanced topics, you know, that we're going to be dealing with in this course. So any questions around the stuff I've talked about so far? Just, you know, kind of a course overview. One thing that I have to do with you guys, and I have to be honest, is the course outline is in flux right now, right? We're working together just to finalize what's happening. So you're going to get your course outline next week, all right? So please bear with it while it's happening. It's going to be more or less what I'm talking about here, as well as I'm going to show you a little schedule for the course as well. A lot of the material that I'm going to be sharing with you is up on eCentennial. So if you already noticed, up online, let's go to eCentennial. You can see that this is the structure I've kind of put together. I've got a gaming students folder as well as a non-gaming students folder. Please look for sections 2 and 3. That means that on Saturdays from 9:30 to 12:30 and from 1:30 to 4:30, which is you guys, please look in the non-gaming module for your stuff. If you look at the gaming students module, they're going to be doing something totally different, right? They're going to be using C++ and SDL to make their game. All right. For you guys are going to be using web technologies, right? So that's where we're going to be looking. In there, in week 1, I have several links that we're going to be looking at today that I've shared with you already. And this is where we're going to share most of our content. From a communication perspective, all the official announcements are going to happen through eCentennial as well as direct email from me, right? We could also use other communication technologies like perhaps Discord or Slack or something else, but all official communications are going to come through me, through Centennial email, and or through the course itself, through eCentennial. Okay, just letting you know. So that's where it's going to happen. I want to talk about the project at this point, and before we get into everything else. So some of you who are game students have seen a project very similar to this, but more or less what we're going to be making is a kind of a semi-complete and polished original. I got to highlight original. And this, by the way, this document is up on eCentennial if you want to see it as well. I want to say original, but not too original, 2D game. And it's going to be more like a prototype more than anything else, okay? You're not going to make a game that you're going to sell after this semester, but you're going to have some really cool experience with making a 2D game, and you're going to make it with web technologies. You're going to work in a team, okay? So this is not an individual kind of a project that you're making. You cannot submit your project individually. I won't accept it, just letting you know. So there are going to be several development roles that you and your team are going to assign, maybe you elect to do. However, here's my assumptions again, going back to assumptions. All of you are programmers. That's my assumption. Right? Are there any of you that like to do artwork? Anybody? Great. Excellent. Anybody else? We're going to have artist and sound engineer as a role, but however, there's nothing that you need to do on your own. You could just acquire assets from somewhere, and I'll give you some places to get assets. So you don't have to make your own assets for this course because it's a non-gaming, kind of our section is for non-gaming students. You can get assets from anywhere, okay? And as long as you give, the people who created the assets credit and cite them in your documentation, you're good to go. Remember, you're not going to sell anything. We're making it so that you can learn how to do stuff on the web with web technologies. So there's several roles that you're going to assign yourself. Each of the roles are going to be prime ships. They're going to be something in addition to you being a developer. An example would be a lead software engineer. So, for example, I want you to have sizes of teams at least 3 up to 6. You cannot have a team less than 3 people in your, for your group. So 3 to 6, groups of 3 to 6. And you're going to wear many hats potentially. One of you might be a lead software engineer. Why? To break ties when it comes to make decisions. Someone is going to create a style guide, maybe for your team, how to code together. There's got to be someone in charge of that. Someone's going to be responsible for your GitHub repo. It's just about responsibility more than anything else. So that is the software engineer. Then there's going to be someone who's the producer or project manager. Because they're running in an agile environment, and there you must track your software somehow, your project. Maybe you're going to use Trello, or maybe you're going to use Jira, or maybe you're going to use Microsoft Project, something to track your things with. You cannot use OneDrive or Google Drive to share your stuff. I won't allow that. You're going to be doing things with GitHub, and you're going to track everything with some kind of project management software. I highly recommend Jira as a software, as it is industry standard. By the way, across all software industries, software engineering, as well as the game industry, right? So Jira might be the best way. However, it's not free. It's $10 a month. $10 a month gives you 10 people to use Jira all at the same time to make a software project. And you can use multiple projects. So if you're working on other projects this semester for $10 a month, you can combine and you can have all kinds of people work together on your projects with you. Or you can elect to do a free software and use Trello, which I'll be talking about later on as well. You don't have to pay anything. Or you can use GitHub. GitHub also has GitHub projects. So there's many, many aspects, but you have to track your project somehow. And that would be the responsibility of the producer/project manager. That's another role. Art, sound engineer, either you make your own art or you get your own art. Okay, I'm okay with that, but you have to organize that. You have to hunt for it. You have to look and see what art makes sense for your project. There's a responsibility for you to get that, that done for yourself, right? And for your team. There's also game designer, and game designer is more of, you're going to design the rules of the game. What is your game? What inspired you to make this game? You might have the idea. You might be the visionary of your game, and that's what the game designer is going to be. Again, game designer is still a developer, but also is responsible for making the game, the idea of the game, right? Finally, there's QA tester, and this is not a bad role. Some people give people who don't want to work on their team this role, and I think it's really not a great decision. QA is one of the most important roles here because it does quality assurance, does bug checking, and also checks to see they actually play your game. Is the game fun? Does the game work like it's supposed to work? Like, you need somebody to do this. Once the feature has been developed, you need someone to validate that it works like how you thought. So each of these roles is important. One thing to note is if you have a smaller team, let's say if you have a team of 3, you may have to assign multiple roles to people. For example, I might be the project manager and QA tester, as an example, right? Maybe there's going to be someone else who's going to be the software engineer and the artist, lead artist. Someone who's going to grab art and stuff like from the internet, right? So that way you can manage a smaller team. So you're going to assign roles to yourself. From a schedule perspective, this is kind of what it's going to look like. Okay, so we had an exercise plan today. I'm probably going to put this exercise off till next week because there's people that were missing today. Some people are still registering for the courses now. Our course list, our class list is a little bit in flux. So we have some people coming in, some people leaving, some people moving from one section to the other. So I'm going to wait until next week to do our first little exercise. It'll be an in-class exercise where you kind of submit your team's GitHub link and all that stuff, and I'll give you a Dropbox for that next week. What you're going to see also that there's several project parts. So there is a team contract that you're going to have to do by next week. It's going to be due next week. And what that means is I'm going to give you some time today to get together and form teams. Again, I recommend teams of 4 to 6 with a minimum team size of 3. Okay? And why is that? Well, I just told you, right, that there's a lot of load on this course in terms of how much workload. So to lighten your load a little bit, especially for the project, get together with other people to make that happen. So teams of 4 to 6 would be nice. minimum of 3. If worst case scenario, you can't find anybody to work with, 3 people. You cannot work on this alone. Okay? So your team contract is going to be due next week, and it's going to be worth 5%. And if you look at all the project parts, where it says part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, all those are project parts, and they all combine to weigh 50% of your course. So your project is worth 50% of your coursework. Okay? Then you have 2 individual assignments. I have to test that you know, or evaluate that you know, the stuff that we've been talking about in class. And your first assignment will be due week 5. It's going to be worth 12% approximately, right? 12%. Your second assignment is in the second half of the semester, also worth 12%. And those 2 assignments combined plus your little exercise next week is going to be worth 25%. That's 25% of your work. A midterm test that we're going to do is worth 15%. That midterm test is going to be an in-class practical assignment that you're going to be doing that day, which is week 7, right? It's individual. It's going to be worth 15%. So 15% plus 25%, right? It's 40% of your work so far. It's individual right there, right? 40%. And then the last 10%, right, is going to be exercises. So you see that there's several exercises, 1, 2, 3. So this exercise with 1%. I'm going to do an exercise around week 4. We're going to be talking about something called finite state machine pattern. Let me go back. Finite state machine is a design pattern. And back in the day, in the 90s, you know, these famous now software engineers got together and they said, hey, let's make a book. Let's call it Design Patterns. And it's a famous book. It outlines 23 software design patterns that all of you should know something about by the time you leave Centennial. And you probably know some already. Some of the most common design patterns for games are singleton design pattern, the finite state machine design pattern, the observer pattern, factory pattern, flyweight pattern, the command pattern, and I keep going on and on. Like there's a lot of them. The object pool pattern, right, from an optimization perspective, and so on. And we're going to be learning several patterns this semester just in this course. Every course that you take, for example, if you took COMP398, which is Emerging Technologies, they're offering it this semester as well. A very challenging course, a great course to take, led by Professor Ilya, right, as the main kind of professor, I would say. That course hits at least 5 patterns from a design patterns perspective, at least the stuff that they do there. Again, I would highly recommend you read this book, and if you're looking to see what that is, you can always search for it. It's called Design Patterns, and it's from the Gang of 4. And if you would look it up, you can see that Gang of 4 wrote this book called Design Patterns. It's a famous book in the 1990s. It reads a little bit academically. It's a book for academia, so it's kind of a tough read. And there's a specific book that you can read for game programming, if you're interested. It's called Game Programming Patterns. Game Programming Patterns. Game Programming Patterns is a really cool book. It's written by Robert Nystrom, and they detail all the patterns we're going to be needing. It's a free book that you can look up online, and you can see that it talks about all the design patterns. So what are design patterns? They're object-oriented design patterns. These ones are all listed in C++, but they're really platform agnostic and language agnostic. They work across every language and every platform, and they really talk about some of the stuff that you need. So that's design patterns. And we're going to be learning one of them, again, week 4, finite state machine pattern. And we use the finite state machine pattern to switch scenes. We have scene 1, which is your start scene, and your start scene is like a menu. And then we have scene 2, which is your main game scene, and you play your game in that scene. And then you have scene 3, which is your game over scene. And then you switch. I go from game over back to play. And maybe I go to the main menu again. I switch scenes. That's finite state machine pattern. And that's only one example of it. Another example of finite state machine pattern, or a state machine pattern, like we call them, is animations. You might have a character in a video game, and they're idling. They're looking around, right? And it's an animation. And then they see you, so they come chase you. That's chase. They go from a patrol state or a watchful state into a chase state. I'm chasing after you. And then I'm close enough to you, and so then I start shooting at you. I go into an attack state, right? And even my animation changes as I'm shooting you. And then after my attack state, you shoot me back. I might hide. I might go into hide state, or I might have to go into cover to fight against you. That's a different state. And then finally, I take some damage, and so now I'm going to run away from you because I don't want to die. My AI, right? We're talking about run away. I'm going to, flee state. And then if you shoot me enough times, I'm going to die, right? So it's going to be, death state, and so on, right? So you see what I'm saying? So finite state machine pattern can work for many, many things, but it's used all over game development. And we're going to learn something about it week 4. The second exercise, or the third exercise, we're going to use collision detection and response. Without collision detection, we don't have a game. I mean, you have things happening in the game. If I shoot a bullet in the game, it's got to collide with something else. Collision detection. Response is when it bounces off something, or what happens when you collide, right? So collision detection and response happening week 5, as when it's slated to happen as well. So those are worth 10%. That gives us 100%. However, there is a bonus exercise that I'm going to run around week 11 to 12 where we do play testing. And this is part of our game user research. We're going to evaluate other people's games in the class. We're going to look at everyone's games and give them feedback. And from that feedback, between the beta release and the final release, teams are expected to make changes to their game, small tweaks and adjustments to make the game better. And if they do that, they get 5% bonus for the entire team. All right, that's coming up week 11 and 12. Notice every time we have a release, each of these releases, and again, I talked about having major releases. The releases we're going to have starting from a project perspective is week 5. Our first release is our first playable. Our first playable is literally, you're going to have some rules for your game. You're going to make some movement happen, some basic placeholder assets that you're going to have online, for the game itself. The game is going to be live and streaming from some kind of website. Most likely, it's going to be GitHub pages, right? And also, notice there's something called a peer review that you're going to do. And we're going to be talking about what a peer review is in a second. So you're going to do peer review, and both the peer review and your first playable build is worth 5%. The peer review is always worth 1% and is an individual component of every one of your releases, right? So if you don't hand in your peer review, you lose 1% easy marks that you should get. If you just hand in all of your peer reviews, and there's several of them, like 5 of them, that's like 5% free, just to give feedback on your team and yourself, like how you're doing, all right? So that is your first playable release. Then a couple weeks later, you have your alpha release. There's a midterm break, again, just after the midterm tests for a week. And then your beta release is week 10, and your final release for this course is week 13. Notice it's not the last week of course. The last week, you're going to do a final presentation, and this final presentation will take the place of a final test or exam. It is mandatory attendance. If you don't attend, you get 0. Right? Because it's like you're doing a final presentation, a final exam. So I got to tell you this as well, that there are 2 presentations that you'll be doing in this course, right? The first presentation is in your pitch presentation, which is happening on week 3. So week 3, you and your team are going to get together, put together some PowerPoint. It's a very quick 5 to 7 page PowerPoint presentation. And only one of you needs to present. I'm not going to make everybody on the team present or stand up here with their hands in their pockets. No. We don't do that here. And also, I also have to tell you that these presentations are not business presentations. I'm not looking for business PowerPoint slides with lots of bullet points. I'm talking about minimalist bullets, enough that you can describe what you're doing, lots of images. You might include animated GIFs or whatever to explain your pitch, because this is a game pitch, not a business presentation pitch. Okay, so that's worth 5% and is due week 3. So not next week, but the week after. Okay? And that'll be your first presentation. Then you won't have another presentation again until the end, but you can base your final presentation on what you developed in week 3. Your final presentation is, again, only one person needs to present, right? One thing it'll also include for your final presentation that I'll require from you is a YouTube video. You'll be actually making a YouTube video. It'll be unlisted, And what you'll be doing is that YouTube video will describe your final presentation. It's almost like you're doing a voiceover, a practice of your final presentation before you actually do your final presentation. And so that's why it's worth 10% of your final grade. There's a little bit of meat and bones to it when you do it, okay? So that really describes all the evaluations that you're going to have for the course in detail. I'm just going to put an official outline together for you guys so it's up on eCentennial properly. And I'm working with Arbin on that, as well as the course coordinator, Ilya Nika. Okay, so that's happening. It's coming up. Wait for it. Another week or so, you're going to have it. We've been working on this. All right, any questions around the evaluations for this course? Some of the stuff that I'm going to be doing. So it's a lot of stuff, right? And the reason why I give you these disclaimers and warnings is like, hey guys, this is not an easy course. There's a lot of stuff here. But hey guys, there's a lot of stuff to learn. I'm really excited to go through this with you because I know that what happens with students, they go through this, they're a little afraid in the beginning because they got a pretty heavy load, because a lot of students have like 6 or more courses. And then when they come out of this, they come up better and stronger than when they compared to when they came in, which is what I want. Okay, so by the way, if you're ever looking for details about any of these things, just scroll down. If you scroll down, you can see that, hey, look, here's the game that you're making. So there's 3 options for games. You can make a game, you know, a side-scrolling bullet hell shooter, as an example. And from a difficulty perspective, this would be level 1, right? So kind of an easier difficulty. Anyone can make this one. It says 2 to 3 members, but I'm going to enforce the minimum 3 rule this semester because I recommend that there's a lot of other stuff you guys are doing at the same time. I want at least 3 people to be on this project, okay? At least 3. And I would accept as high as 4 on this one this semester, as opposed to what it says here, 2 to 3, okay? So 3 or 4 people is okay for this one. Your tank game is intermediate level. This is where most people are going to sit. If you have anything more than 4 people, for example, 4 to 6 people, this is going to be where you're going to sit this semester in a tank game. Now, it's not a tank game like tanks. A tank could also be a person with different abilities, right? And so you can morph the idea, and we can talk about your idea for the type of game you're going to make. But one of the things that it says here is 2-player local multiplayer, right? We're going to talk about how to get input from 2 different devices or from player. This is where the challenge is going to be. I'm going to show you how to do this. And one of the things that I asked for, these are all the requirements to make sure that you adhere to what you need to do for the game. This one is advanced difficulty, and it's for 6 people, groups of 6, not 4 to 6, 6, okay? Why? It's a lot of coding, and you have to make your own physics happen, right? I'm not covering physics 100% in this course. I'm doing just the bare minimum that you need. So I highly recommend you have to be super motivated to do this one, as well as you have to have quite a few people, 6 people, in the, you know, kind of to do this. Why? Because you need assets. You need testing. You need someone to research physics. That's just like one person gone, right? How to do that. You may want to install a physics engine, for example, Box 2D. You may want to try and do that, or something else, Fizzy.js. So when you do that, that takes a person away from the regular development task, and this is why you need at least 6 people to do this thing, okay? So those are the kind of games you can make. No other games will be allowed. You won't be allowed to make a role-playing game, any kind of puzzle game. You won't be allowed to make a snake game, an asteroids game, or any kind of car racing game. All those games are out, all right? And if you're really concerned about what kind of game you can make, come ask me. I will approve the game as long as it's cool. You can also use assets from another course. If you did COMP397 as an example, or if you did a course in another gaming course somewhere else, you can use those assets in your course. You can remake a game that you've already made if you like to. But for the most part, please just go through me, make sure that I'm okay with everything if you have a question about this. All right. So again, the reason why I say no role-playing games is because it's really hard to make a good role-playing game. And if you have other ideas, for example, things like tower defense or MOBA or something else crazy like that, please talk to me because I want to make sure that you're able to handle those kind of projects. All right, so that's the game that you can make. And if you scroll down, you can see all the details of what I'm looking for week over week here. The first thing that I'm looking for today is a team contract. Team contract. And let me take a look at that. So I've already posted the team contract. and let's look at the document for a second. So from a team contract perspective, there's two things you need to do for this particular deliverable. One, you must come up with a unique name, right? Come up with a name for your team. Please don't leave this contract document with team name, all right? Team name is your name. Come up with a name, right? It doesn't have to be like super unique, but at least some kind of name that represents your team. Each person's contact information in terms of their real name, not some kind of weird name like, you know, Funny Girl 76, right? It's not that kind of name I'm looking for. I'm looking for your name, first name and last name, as well as student ID and some contact information. I recommend minimum email to kind of communicate with each other. And you're going to put that here. You're going to, anything that's highlighted like this, you need to modify, or you should approve at least. You're going to have a team expectations section where it's basically say something like this. We understand that throughout the course, all team members are designated as developers. Yeah? Everyone's a programmer. By the end of the semester, we will have a functioning and somewhat polished game prototype using the CreateJS suite of JavaScript libraries and TypeScript. No, you cannot just use JavaScript by itself. No, you cannot use another framework like Phaser or something else. You must use the stuff that I've asked you to use. So you're limited in that perspective. And you're going to say, but why, Tom? Why? Because I want to make sure that you know what you're doing. And the second reason is I've had a lot of people find stuff online that they try to use and pass it off as their own, and I'm not going to accept those things. So please stick to the requirements that I've asked you to kind of do. If you have another idea, please run it by me. Again, exceptions can be made, but you know, talk to me about it. Communicate is all I'm saying, right? All team members must be able to communicate decisions, techniques, and processes related to all aspects of the development process for our game. So in other words, just because you're an artist doesn't mean you don't know how the gameplay was done, all right? Just because you're a level designer doesn't mean you don't know how the game engine was formed. You need to know your game. Okay, you can't be like oblivious to the game or what it's about. So I'm going to give you some time after this. We're going to take a short break, and what I'm going to give you some time to do is select a common time for you and your team to meet. There might be some hours that work well with you guys, you know, something that's through your schedule. My recommendation and my ask of you is that you meet at least once a week outside of this course, right, to do some work and to meet to organize what you're doing. So meetings should be sweet and short. I want to say it that way as opposed to short and sweet. It's got to be sweet first. So nice meetings that are, you know, you're going to have with your friends here in the course. Try not to waste time with meetings. When you come in, have an agenda. Your producer should know what they're talking about that day. And agenda items should be democratic, so they should be shared ahead of time when you get together, so you make the most of your meeting. And then other requirements, things like some expectations. What about if you can't meet expectations? For example, you don't know how to do something. One of the reasons why we're using agile methodologies as opposed to waterfall project management. Again, waterfall, great for construction. If you want to build a house, waterfall's for you, right? Because the waterfall project management process goes like this. I need a plan, a solid plan. I know what I'm building. I need to build my house, right? I'm going to get my foundation, then the envelope on the house. Then I'm going to build the interior of the house or whatever. And maybe I'm going to have my plumbing and my HVAC and everything else. You have to have a plan. It's not like I can build my house with no plan. No one will allow you, first of all. You won't even get permits to do such a thing, right? And it's not like I can go to if you're my plumber, I'm not going to go to you and say, hey, plumber, can you add a pipe right here? You can't do that, right? Everything's got to be pre-planned from the beginning. That's great, but it doesn't work for software engineering, because in software engineering, we have uncertainty. We don't know if it's possible. When the client comes to us and says, hey, Tom, we want you to do this, I'm like, okay. And if I look at it, I think I can do it, and most likely I'll be able to do it, but I don't know the timing. I don't know how it's actually going to turn out in the end. There's a lot of uncertainty just from a regular software project. But for games, it's even worse. Why? Because of the fun factor. It can be functional, and there can be artwork in there. I can even hear sounds, but it may not be fun. And that makes it a lot of uncertainty for a software engineering project. So you may have some issues here where you get into the thing where, one of your team members doesn't know what to do, right? And we need to have rules about what to do. If they can't deliver and it's legit, you need to have things to do, like come talk to me, talk to a software engineering student or another interactive gaming student, and go get help, that kind of thing. Give them a chance to catch up with the stuff that they haven't been able to do. That's the number one rule. And talk to your team members. Don't come to me first and say, Tom, this team member's not working, we want him out. No, I'm not going to do that. Tom, we want to fire this guy. No, you can't fire anybody. All right? This is not a business. This is a class, right? However, what you can do is talk to me and document what your conversations with the other person, and that you've told them, this is what we need. He or she hasn't been able to deliver for whatever reason. There might be a reason or an excuse, and then you made your steps and making your due diligence, so that way you've covered yourself. If a member is unable to complete a task on time, you want to give them a chance to make it up, and they have a couple of team meetings in order for that to happen. One thing I talked about in the last section was be honest, be transparent. Try not to run around behind people's backs and say, I'm not really happy with Tom. He's not really doing great in terms of his delivery, this kind of thing. Talk to Tom. If Tom is your problem, talk to him, right? Project managers, producers, have honest conversations. Go to your team members and say, you're not delivering, and you agreed to this deliverable, whatever this thing that that person took on. However, what happens if they still fail to deliver? Sometimes we may need to flag those people as unproductive, especially when someone does not deliver anything, misses meetings frequently, does not communicate at all. You can't find them. They're missing in action. These are some of the things that happen when it comes to projects, right? And this is why people don't like to work with other people in group projects at school, because they don't do their work, right? Or they're very busy, or their dog ate their homework, or their laptop blew up, or, and I keep going on with the ors, right? And when you hear one excuse, it's okay, maybe they didn't do something, but if it's like, I'm not able to deliver, and I want you to do my project, and I want to get marks while you're doing the work, that's not a very good environment, and we need to flag these people as unproductive. Flagging means you've already talked to them, you've already tried to work with them, everyone has, you've had a conversation, so you've had your conversation with those people, and then you let me know. That's how it goes, because that's proper protocol, in my opinion. Once I know about it and I know that person's not productive, I'm going to work on a plan to get them productive. Sometimes I will move them from one team to the other if it's a personality issue. Like, for example, if you just don't get along. That might be some of the reason. Or sometimes they just get a 0 for that deliverable. Like, that release, let's say they didn't work on their first playable release and they just weren't available, but now they're back. Maybe there's a life thing that happened, or maybe there's a good reason why it didn't happen. I'll work with that too. But we need to be able to understand when this happens. And it's going to happen not just in this course, but in other courses where sometimes people aren't productive for whatever reason. All right. And then there's the agreement part, which is, hey, we the team of, fill in your team name, please, today, right, have come up with these expectations together and agree to adhere to them throughout the academic semester, right? That's what it is. We understand our own rules and the consequences for breaking them. We also agree that we read and understood the material in the course syllabus, which is our course outline, or the stuff that I'm talking about here, okay? And then down here you sign. Now, some people are weird about signing, but at the end of the day, it is really like a contract for yourself. It's a commitment. You're making a commitment to finish, this particular project. Every time I run a project in every school that I teach, right, I get people to sign this kind of contract. It might be different slightly, but for the most part, it's this kind of contract. And why is that? Because it helps with team adherence, like team, cohesion, keeping a team together. It helps with communication. It helps with expectations. That's what it's for. It's not for you to be in jail. Okay, it's not that kind of contract. All right. And sometimes, if you're an interactive gaming studio, a little studio here that we're making, you may want to add language in here about your intellectual property. For example, maybe you want to take this game further after this semester and, I don't know, sell it somehow. Or make it into a real game with other technologies. Maybe this is going to be your prototype and you're going to make another game with Unity or Unreal or something else, right? And so people add in intellectual property things like, we, the team, agree that each one of us is one part owner for this entire game kind of concept or whatever. And that's totally fine. So this is your game contract. This team contract is due next week, Saturday by midnight, right? And it requires this contract to be filled out, team and everything else that to be created, as well as a little PDF document with your own logo. Now, some of you mentioned that there's no artist, but you can put a logo together, which it could just be some kind of hexagon with your initials, For logos, please do not copy or mangle somebody else's logo. Like, don't take Apple's logo, flip it this way, and then turn it yellow, and then say, that's my logo. No, right? Make it your own, and that means it could be very simple. It could be, again, some kind of vector graphic or whatever. It doesn't have to be that complex. You can look up some ideas for logos, but it shouldn't take you more than a few minutes, 10 minutes max, unless you're an artist and you want to go crazy and make your logo because you're going to make cards for yourself and marketing materials and whatever. Don't take too much time doing this. It's just a way of identifying your team when it comes to presentations, right? And documentation. It's almost like your stamp. This is our team doing this work, right? Not just our team name. So please come up with the logo. So those are 2 deliverables that are due next week at midnight. And if you look up on eCentennial, if we go there, you can see that there is under assignments, there is an assignment that I've posted for the team contract. And it tells you all the things that you need, but notice submission detail says the signed team contract document in PDF format and a team logo in PDF format. That's all due next week by midnight.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So as at the beginning you said the class is not completing today, and we
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold on. I know that most people are here today in your section, but yeah. So what if new people come and other people leave? Then you'd have to adjust your contract. That's what would happen. Okay. It happens, right? So now remember, I have 3 sections. 1 on Tuesdays, mostly for gaming students, and 1 on today in the morning between 9:30 and 12:30. So you can attend any one of those sections. But however, if you attend the one with gaming students, you're going to learn something totally different. I don't recommend that one, unless you want to just stay there the whole time. Any other questions? So you understand what we're doing?
Can I attend the morning?
Absolutely, if you want to. But that means you're going to have to be part of those teams, that group. Okay. You can't be in a group here and then attend there, right?
Yeah. No.
So yes, you can, but you have to be part of that group. And you have until next week to join a group. Okay, so it's totally possible. The reason for this is because I own all the sections. So I have section 1, 2, and 3. There's no other professors, just me, right? So it doesn't matter. If you're signed up to me, I have a combined section, and I can mark you no matter what section you're in. All right? As well, for attendance purposes, if you want to attend, even though maybe you want to stay in this section, but you want to attend, that other section sometimes because you're busy or you have work or something, it's okay. All right. One thing that I will do, if you can't attend, like I said, is record, like I'm doing now. So you can always look at the recording as reference, right? Because there's going to be technical material, administrative material like this, other things that I'm going to be recording for you guys, so you have an idea of what's happening in the course. Okay. So, any questions around the plan for this semester? Because that's really what I want to focus on in this recording. What's the plan? The plan is we're learning TypeScript, we're learning Create.js, and we're working in teams to do some of our evaluations. 50% of our evaluations is teamwork, right? That's the plan. So any questions around that? Okay, so it's 2:30. I've talked for about an hour. Let's take some time now. I'm going to stop recording the video, and I'll post it later up online here on eCentennial. It's already posted automatically as soon as I'm done. By the way, I'm streaming live here, so if you were at home, you could have watched this live, this broadcast. But I'm going to make a link to the video when it's done processing up on YouTube, and then you can watch it later if you need to reference it again. Okay, so let's take a short break. Let's take 10 minutes to go and take a break, and when you come back, I want you to form teams with the people that are in the group. Okay. One thing to note, if up on eCentennial, if you want to look at eCentennial, under communication, there is groups, And under groups, there are 20 groups that I've created, 20 of them, right? It's self-enrollment. So you would go up and choose one of these 20 groups and create your team, right? And then later on, next week, what I'll do is I'll change the name of these groups from these generic names, like Group 9, as an example, to whatever your team name is, whatever your team is called. Okay, so we'll do that next week, right? So after the break, get together with the people that are in the room that you want to partner with. And then what we'll do is I want you to change your seating. If you're seated way far away and you want to work with other people, I want you to move so you sit in the same tables as everyone else that you're going to be having a team with, okay? So let's take a 10-minute break, and when we come back, we'll form teams, and after that, I'll start my second recording where I'm going to do the technical part of this lesson, which is going to be installation of Visual Studio Code, GitHub, Node.js, Create.js. We're going to do a Hello World. We're going to do all kinds of stuff today, and it's going to take us right till 4:30, okay? I'm stopping the recording now.